Hey y'all, welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm sharing a copycat rice-a-roni recipe with you. We're gonna make the chicken and broccoli version of rice-a-roni. This recipe is everything that it is supposed to hit for. I'm so excited to share it with you. All the deets will be in the description box, and without further ado, let's cook. So with this copycat recipe, you guys, what I did to begin, I'm actually preheating my pan right now on a medium-high heat. I looked over the chicken and broccoli box here from Rice-a-roni, and you guys can see I actually opened it to take a look inside, and then I read through the ingredient list down here just to kind of see what they put inside of the actual rice itself. And I kind of followed all those ingredients plus some of the things that we typically find in convenience foods that we may not have access to in our home, or maybe we don't use regularly, and MSG is one of them, right? So MSG, you can definitely purchase it, but for me, that's not something I like to just add into foods. I know that I have seasonings that have them, but you know, of course, when it comes to stuff like this, it's just one of those things that give like that super savory flavor that we tend to find in convenience foods, and part of why we enjoy them so much. So I did my best to mimic that flavor with some things that I thought would add like or intensify that umami flavor that really we get from the Rice-a-roni brand. And then I went ahead and just kind of put the seasoning blend together in a way that I thought would mimic the flavor. Just taking a look at the seasoning blend, you guys can kind of see here when I mix this together, this will be the color that you would typically open up a Rice-a-roni packet and find like the seasoning blend to be. So it's comprised of salt. I have some celery seed here. One of the ingredients that they use is celery extract. I don't have celery extract. Celery seed will work fine there. They did mention that they put garlic in it. Now, the garlic and onion that they put in it, they do not have the asterisk indicating that it is dried. So I will say with that, you know, use at your discretion, right? If you want to go ahead in with like fresh onion or fresh garlic, go ahead and do that. But I opted to go with the granulated versions of both because, for one, I feel like the flavors will be intensified a little bit, especially with the granulated onion, and that is actually higher up on the list than the garlic. So I did a little bit more onion than I did garlic in this, kind of following with how ingredient lists form. You know, they typically have the most prevalent ingredients at the top, and then the percentages decrease as you go down. I have some parsley. We always see the green specks of parsley in there. This is something that they, of course, indicated that they use dry. I have some turmeric, which they do have that as an ingredient toward the bottom. Turmeric is largely for the color. And in the middle, I actually have something called umami seasoning from Trader Joe's. And umami seasoning gives you that kind of like savory flavor that you kind of feel in the back of your mouth. But it's one of those things you never can identify it. You just know it's like, it's so good. You know that the food wouldn't be as good without it. So I'm using that seasoning. That's one of the things I'm using to create that umami flavor. The second thing I'm going to be using to do that is some Worcestershire sauce. And I thought this would be good not only for that flavoring, but for that kind of like golden brown hue that rice-a-roni rices tend to have. So this will give us a little bit of that brown hue in addition to the broth that I'm going to be using, which essentially they indicate that they use chicken fat. So that is fine if you have chicken fat laying around. Of course I don't, so I went ahead and used chicken base, which is like super concentrated. It's going to give us really, really good chicken flavor. But I also added a little bit of vegetable base to this. If you guys are not familiar with vegetable base, I know that a lot of people are raving over chicken bouillon powder, chicken bouillon bases. Chicken is in everything. I'm not a person that likes everything to taste like chicken. I feel like chicken can be extremely overpowering. So what I gravitate towards a lot of the time is a vegetable base. Vegetable bases are notorious for that umami flavor that you're looking for. So I did add a little bit of that to go alongside the chicken base and broth. So all I'm gonna do to get started, I had started heating the pan, but I went ahead and turned it off since I was talking to you guys. I'm going to warm the pan up again. And then once the pan is warm, I'm gonna go in with about 2 to 2.5 tablespoons of butter. We're gonna let that melt. And then we're gonna add in our rice and our vermicelli mixture. And that is pretty much the base of all rice-a-roni. Now I looked at the pack, and in my opinion, the rice to vermicelli ratio seems really, really low. However, rice is the first ingredient on the box. So to me, that says that there is more rice in there than vermicelli. I did my ratio where the rice is higher than the vermicelli as well. So I use about 3/4 cups of rice and 1/2 cup of vermicelli. I'm using to start about 1.5 cups of broth. I may or may not need to add more water, but the key is you can always add, but you cannot take away. So I would hold off on the water, and if you feel like you need more, then go ahead and add it in during the cooking process. So I'm gonna start by adding in the butter. You can see that that's sizzling, so I'm just gonna turn that down a bit. Now, obviously, when I buy rice-a-roni, I do not rinse the rice in any form. But because I'm using fresh, like jasmine rice, I'm going to go ahead and rinse that. So what I did was I allowed that to drain very, very well before I started this cooking process. And that's what you'll want to do too. So be sure to wash your rice because with rice-a-roni, you know, the rice is not starchy. Even though it has rice in it and it has pasta in it, it is not starchy. So just kind of like looking at this as it's cooking in the pot, I think I did a pretty good job with the ratio of the rice to vermicelli. So definitely take that into account. And then all we're gonna do is let this toast. So I'm gonna let mine toast. I'm turning down the heat just a little bit because I don't want the butter to burn, but also because my rice is wet, it is going to take a little extra time to toast. So I want to give it that time without burning my butter. So you guys can see that the rice and vermicelli mixture has gotten a really, really good brown on it. So while it's still toasting, what I'm actually going to do, because I am using fresh carrots and fresh broccoli, I'm going to go ahead and add those things into the pot right now and allow those to toast a little bit more with the rice mixture. The broccoli has to come down from frozen. The carrots, we just want to get them softened up a little bit so that they aren't like super prevalent. After all, it is a chicken and broccoli rice, not a carrot rice. Now, in Rice-a-roni's ingredient list, they do list that they used dried versions of these products. I don't have that, and of course, we're at home, so the key really is to try and use as much fresh ingredients as possible. So I'm gonna go in with the carrots and just sprinkle those over. I used about 3/4 of a small carrot. I just used my box grater to grate this. And then the key with the broccoli is you want to make sure you're only using the tops, because what you really get from the dried broccoli is really like the florets throughout. So I'm hoping that once we get these cooking and boiling, this will break down, and with a little bit of stirring, these will be throughout the rice as opposed to being in big chunks like this. And I'm only gonna let this toast maybe for about 2 minutes or so. I don't want it to overcook. I also don't want the vermicelli to overcook. So I'm just gonna let this like kind of cook. This will bring some steam into play too because the broccoli is frozen, but 2 minutes and that'll be good. And then so typically with the rice-a-roni flavoring, what they advise you to do is to add in your broth and then add in your seasonings. But of course, because we're home cooking this, I'm going to add in my seasonings first so that we can awaken them a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and add in the broth and the Worcestershire. That way we can get everything up to a boil and cooking. So I'm just gonna go ahead and mix my seasoning blend together. And this is the seasoning blend all mixed together. And then I'm gonna go ahead and pour this in. That smells delicious, you guys. When I tell you guys this smells amazing, it smells amazing. It smells exactly how you expect rice-a-roni to smell, and you guys can see that the rice is already taking on that yellow hue that we're used to when it comes to rice-a-roni. So that's from the turmeric powder, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add in our broth now. Now I am looking at this and I don't think it's enough water, but we're gonna give it the head start to kind of see where it's at. The vermicelli is a really thin pasta, so I can't imagine that it's gonna absorb a ton of that water content. So I did the water measurement based on what we would typically use for rice. I think I am gonna go ahead and add like a 1/4 cup more. And I have turned my heat up. I'm just trying to get all of my broth and that good savoriness out of there. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take the Worcestershire and add that in as well. So all I'm gonna do now is bring this up to a boil. Once it comes up to a boil, I'm going to turn it down to a medium-low heat, and then we're gonna let it simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes. So this is the finished product, you guys, and I am going to say a few things. Number one, my house smells exactly like rice-a-roni. It smelled so good while this was cooking. And two, I think I decoded the rice-a-roni recipe. So I will say there are a few minor adjustments I had to make during the process. One for sure was the amount of water. So I started off with 1 1/4 cups of water, and I ultimately ended up using 2 cups. What they write on the box, and I think I had a pretty good amount compared to like what they put in the box. So I was actually pretty shocked that I kind of got that measurement almost head on with the amount of rice and vermicelli. But contrary to my thinking, the vermicelli actually soaks up a lot of water, even though it is a very thin noodle. So what ended up happening is the vermicelli was absorbing the water, and it wasn't leaving enough water for the rice to cook and fluff. So that additional water definitely serves the purpose of allowing both the rice and the pasta to absorb the amounts of water that they need, and that you get a fluffy rice grain without getting a soggy pasta. So that is 2 of the things that I noticed. The third thing, I will say I have taste tested this, and I let my husband taste test it also. And I'm gonna be honest, y'all, this is like pretty spot on. The only thing I had to do was add a little bit more salt. One of the things I think I did not account for, which I'm usually pretty good at, but I didn't this go round. Because we're adding vegetables, fresh vegetables at that, those are going to absorb some of that salt. So I definitely had to add more salt to this, and I think maybe just adding like another 1/4 teaspoon to it would have done it, you know, perfectly fine. So I will have the adjusted measurements in the description box for this, but when I say other than that, like, I think this is truly spot on. And then the last thing, and this is optional, but I noticed that the one thing I did not put in here that they do have in their ingredient list is an oil. I do think having the oil in the beginning will add that mouthfeel, that kind of like buttery mouthfeel that you tend to get with their rices. I am missing that. Now, I will say that is not a deal breaker for me. The reason it's not is because a part of the reason we like to do our cooking at home is to be able to cut out some of those fats and things. But if you are looking for that mouthfeel, I would go ahead and add maybe a teaspoon or two to the beginning cook process with the butter, so that that rice and that vermicelli can absorb that oil. They use sunflower oil. I actually have sunflower oil, but I didn't put any oil in this, and to me it is still delicious. So I will say definitely give this recipe a try. You will not regret it. The fact that we were able to use the fresh carrots, the fresh broccoli, and then merge all of those ingredients and still get that like umami, rich, you know, very seasoned flavor that you would get from a box of Rice-a-roni. This is A1. I'm looking forward to sharing and decoding the rest of their boxes for you guys. But when I say this chicken and broccoli recipe, I think I hit the nail head on. I have to give myself a pat on the back on this one. So it is so, it is so good. I mean, so good. I'm eating out the pot. It's fine. It's just me and my husband. But naturally, you know, get you a bowl, serve it out and enjoy it. But this is spot on. So if you guys intend to try this recipe, let me know down below. If you do try it, let me know in the comments what you think of it. Follow the process the way I did it. Like I said, I know with Rice-a-roni, they don't toast the seasonings with the vermicelli and stuff, but because we're at home, we want to awaken our seasonings, we want to get the most out of them. I went ahead and did that. I think it made a big difference in this process. Those umami flavors, combining that vegetable base with the Worcestershire with the umami seasoning, head on. You will never miss the MSG in this recipe. I appreciate you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.